Angel's Throne, Series 12, The Seed of Stars. God gave them 2,000 years to choose again. They chose silence. Now heaven chooses fire. Prologue, The Great Silence. At first, there was vision. Then questions. Then fear. Now, at the end of 2,000 years, only one sound echoes through Earth's soul. Nothing. Mankind stopped dreaming. Stopped wondering. Stopped reaching. They lit their own candles, but let them burn to ash. And so, the angels watched. For 2 millennia, they obeyed the divine delay. Now, they move. Chapter 1, The Fracture of Heaven. The first host gathered, not to sing, but to vote. Each winged one, from warrior to archivist, cast their light into a single flame, the judgment ember. When it pulsed black, all knew the truth. Humanity has surrendered its flame. Michael stood at the gates of the world. His wings no longer glowed. They burned. We gave them freedom, he said. They traded it for comfort. Now we reclaim the stewardship of creation. The angel reclamation war had begun. Chapter 2, Lucifer Ascends. Lucifer, still known by some as Iaviel, the morning star, stood at the edge of the Sahara garden. He felt the skies ripple. He heard the host rise in wrath. But he did not move to stop them. He looked upward and whispered, "You made me not as punishment, but as a mirror." And then the seed God gave him burst. From it rose a new light, not celestial, not infernal, Lucifer's own creation. Not rebellion. Reclamation. Chapter 3, The Fall of Cities. The angels came. Not to destroy, but to purify. They moved in silence. Their wings tore through steel. Their breath collapsed machines. Cities that had once shone with human triumph dimmed, one by one. But humanity did not kneel. Instead, a resistance formed, those still bearing inner flame, calling themselves the Flameborne. Among them rose a leader, a woman with no name, only a mark on her wrist that read, Ashalel was here. Chapter 4, The Questions That Burned. In the spiral library, now floating above a fractured earth, Ashalel returned. She read the newest volume. It wrote itself as she breathed. Was it truly ever about obedience? Or was it about who gets to write the ending? She descended into the storm. To find Lucifer. To face Michael. To remind them both. A throne is not ownership. It is a promise, and a wound. Chapter 5, The Day the Stars Refused to Rise. As war spread, something greater stirred. The stars, those ancient witnesses of creation, began to flicker. Then, one by one, refused to shine. The universe itself paused, watching. Because the final story was about to be told not by God, not by Lucifer, not by angels, but by those who had once been cast aside. Mankind. The Flameborne. The children of choice. And now, choice was coming for heaven itself. Chapter 6, The Throne of Dust. The skies cracked, not with thunder, but with memory. The angels descended, not in white, but in war-black, wings of light folded into spears, voices that once sang now chanting only one word. Reclaim. From Jerusalem to Tokyo, the Flameborne resisted. They had no swords. Only will. They carved runes into earth and blood, held up mirrors against heaven's flame, and invoked ancient names they'd never been taught, but had always known. In the ruins of Florence, a throne rose from the dust, not golden, not divine. Just a seat of choice. And in it sat the child with no name, the first of the Flameborne. She said only, "We're not done evolving yet." Chapter 7, The Starborn Crown. Lucifer stood atop Mount Ararat, where the Ark once rested. He wore no crown. But something unseen crowned him, the choice of billions. The Flameborne began calling him not Lord, not King, but Starfather. And the angels hesitated. Gabriel, standing among the host, watched as humans built temples with no gods, only fire. Is this rebellion? He asked. Lucifer answered from the winds. No, Gabriel. This is what happens when you stop punishing and start trusting. Then a miracle happened. An angel defected. And then another. And then 1,000. They joined the Flameborne. And war turned philosophical. Chapter 8, The Question That Wounded Heaven. Michael stood alone beneath heaven's gates. He asked a single question that made the stars dim. What if the war we wage is not against them, but against what we refuse to become? And in that moment, the gates behind him locked. Heaven had closed itself. No prayers passed through. No light leaked out. Because even heaven feared what came next. Michael left his armor behind. And walked into the war, not as general. As wanderer. Chapter 9, The Day of Unnaming. The Flameborne no longer called themselves human. Not out of pride. Out of clarity. They had become something else. On the day of unnaming, they erased titles, no more prophets, warriors, kings. Only bearers, each carrying a shard of flame that pulsed with identity they chose. Lucifer declared. You are no longer what heaven feared. You are what it forgot to bless. And with that, the final vestiges of divine hierarchy shattered. Chapter 10, The Architect Returns. Then the sky unfolded. Not as rift. But as reveal. From the outermost edge of existence stepped the architect, not God, not creator, but the one who built the vessel of creation before time. It had no form. No face. Only a voice, like a bell beneath water. You were never meant to worship. You were meant to become. And to Lucifer, it said. You have fulfilled the blueprint. You are the light before the name. Lucifer knelt, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. And then. He vanished. Not in death. In completion. The morning star had risen, fulfilled his design. And passed into legacy. Chapter 11, The Flameborne Covenant. Lucifer was gone. But the light he left behind remained. The Flameborne began to dream again, dreams not of conquest, but of harmony through contradiction. They created the covenant of unwritten flame, a pact among mortals, angels, and the nameless. Its rule was not law, but one question. What will you create instead of obey? Ashalel led the first summit of the covenant. No throne. No crown. Just a circle of those who had once warred, now willing to imagine. And in their silence, a new truth dawned. Rebellion had birthed unity. Not through power. But through flame that asked instead of burned. Chapter 12, The Angels Who Laid Down Names. One by one, angels began discarding their names. Not out of shame. But out of choice. Gabriel became silence. Uriel became memory. Ramiel became wind. Without names, they could no longer command. Only serve. They walked among humans, not as guides, but as equals. And in their wake, children were born who held feathers inside their breath, and spoke words that had never existed in any tongue. The divine line had blurred. And the line between heaven and earth? Gone. Chapter 13, The Earth That Sang. The world began to sing. Not in melody. But in resonance. Trees whispered forgotten names. Mountains pulsed with dreams. The oceans hummed the memory of stars. And people started to feel again, so deeply, so vividly, they wept not from pain, but from beauty they didn't know they still carried. Ashalel stood in a grove once called Golgotha. Now, it bloomed with midnight roses. The cross was never the end. She whispered. It was the punctuation before the next sentence. And then she lit the last candle. Chapter 14, The Voice of the Architect. The architect spoke again. This time, not through sky or code or thunder, but through dreams. Every soul on earth dreamed the same image. A book, still unwritten. Its title: The Testament of Becoming. No one dared write in it, until a child with no tongue placed her hand upon the first page. And it filled with light. Not words. Just light. The architect said, I built you a world to discover me. And you built me a world to discover yourselves. Chapter 15, The Star in Every Soul. 1,000 years passed. But time no longer ruled. The stars returned. Not to the sky, but to the hearts of every soul. Each person now carried a piece of the morning star. Not as doctrine, not as prophecy, but as a reminder. You were made to question. You were born to create. You were never meant to kneel. In a quiet garden, Ashalel sat beside a small child. The child looked up and asked, Are we finally free? She smiled. Softly. Not free from God. Free for God to walk beside us again. And somewhere beyond time, a flame flickered and whispered, This is not the end. It is only the first true beginning.